Let me get this started here, and I'll open up my files here in a moment. So, happy Wednesday. It feels weird because I was gone on Friday. I haven't seen you in quite a bit. How's the dissecting going? Okay, all right. So, what's happening then next week in terms of lab? Pig practical. Pig practical. Your time to shine. Your celebration of pig anatomy knowledge. I know that sounds really weird, but for Cindy's lab, did she go over with you guys yesterday? And I know some people have lab today. Did she go over with you about what to expect for the pig practical? A little bit? Okay, perfect. Cindy and I are trying to coordinate to have some open lab times. And so we're trying to figure out if we do have open lab times, that would be 100% optional. You're not required to come and practice for the pig practical by any stretch. We're just trying to figure out when we can coordinate because one of us needs to be there for the lab. So, all right, so we are basically finished with the digestive system and then cruising on to the respiratory system. But I want to kind of stop, pump the brakes for a minute, stop, and I have a little something for you to check out. And online people, I'm going to post this for you also in Canvas. Let me get this popped up here. So, it says it's already open. Okay, cool. There we are. All right. So I am a super visual learner myself. And I know that everybody is a little bit different, but I'm one of those people that needs to like see a picture. I can't draw very well, but I still try. Draw, label, whatever else. And I have found some pictures for some of these body systems online. This is literally one that I found when I did a Google search of like a digestive system drawing. I'm going to actually pass this out to you here in person. I have printed copies. And I want you to don't stress, relax, put your notes aside, and I want you to see what you can fill out on this diagram. Now, it is not like, don't be hindered by there's A and then it skips to B. There's a whole lot of stuff you could probably write about in A. So my suggestion is to label parts and types of digestion that might happen in those places, or enzymes, or weird, whatever kinds of things that are going on. So I don't want you to be anxious about this. This is not graded. You're not turning this in for me, but I am going to pause my recording here in a moment. I'm going to pass this out to the in-person students online, or if you're absent from being in person today, this is going to be in Canvas. It's like a digestive system diagram. And I think that doing something like this to study can be really, really helpful. Okay? So I'm going to pause this right now. I'm going to run around and hand these out to my folks here in person. And we're not going to take tons of time. We may not get through like filling it all out, but I just want you to have a little bit of a chance. Honestly, I want you to feel a little anxious. Like, I know that sounds weird, but a little bit of that pressure of like, okay, what do I know? Because then you realize what you're not confident on and what you might need to spend some more time on study. Because this is a low, no stakes. Like, there's nothing graded about this kind of a thing. Does that make sense-ish? Okay. All right. I'm going to pause this and pass. All right. So we're starting to have a couple of questions in the in-person group here, which is fantastic. Like, where's this? What's this part? Is this the spleen? I love it. All of it. That's good. So let's go over some of this. In no way am I going to probably do every little thing that you could do on here, but this is available to you in Canvas, and I don't know about you guys, but I get tired of reviewing my notes for things too, like in terms of studying. So doing something like this where you have a picture of one of these body systems and trying to draw some stuff on there or label it is just like a different way to review. You could also then open up your notes and look at your notes and add stuff that you didn't put on there, kind of a thing. So let's start at the beginning. So what did you have for A? So cool. So we had oral cavity, or there was also a question like, could you say mouth? Yes. All right. But I do want you to recognize, sometimes I might say mouth, sometimes I might say oral cavity in terms of you answering questions for this stuff. So whatever you choose to label it with, that's totally fine, but be familiar with both. Okay. So oral cavity, mouth, whatever else. So for what kind of, and I asked you to think about digestion, what kind of digestion happens in the oral cavity? Mechanical and chemical. So for mechanical, and this is where my chicken scratch handwriting, like I run out of space. I totally run out of space when I'm doing this. How do we have mechanical digestion happening in the mouth, in the oral cavity? What's happening there? Yeah. Chewing or mastication, the fancy word for chewing, right? Mastication, chewing. Cool. So we've got that going on here. And then it was also said, and I totally agree, we also have chemical digestion happening. What's happening in the oral cavity for chemical digestion? Saliva, right? We have the saliva, specifically the salivary amylase. Saliva, and I'm going to say salivary amylase, and this is where I start to run out of room. What is salivary amylase? What is that breakdown? Carbs, starches. Carbs or starches. Specifically, starches are a type of carbohydrate. Okay, so we're breaking down starch. Now, and this is all just me writing about the oral cavity. What's this weird thing right here? The tongue. What's so great about the tongue in terms of digestion? Yeah, it pushes food back, right? So then we've got this thing called the bolus. What's a bolus?
Chew up piece of food.
Chewed up food and saliva combo deal, right? So then I would say pushes the bolus, which is chewed up food. Am I off the screen? Not quite. Chewed up food and saliva. And I'm going through this piece by piece by piece. A lot of you that I saw here in person were just like labeling structures that you know. Either way, it does not matter. It's totally fine. Like you could totally label it by structures and then go through and write whatever you know about those different things. Should we keep going on this a little bit? Okay. So what about these circly things here? We didn't directly talk about those, but what do you think those are? Salivary glands. So I'm going to just be like, oh yeah, the saliva, salivary amylase goes there. Let's see here. I'm cheating. I'm looking at one I did previously too. All right. What else do we have in like the oral cavity area? What's this little flapper thing right there? The epiglottis. Epiglottis, right? That was the big thing that we needed to find when you were doing your pig dissection when we opened up the oral cavity. And that, what's the function of the epiglottis?
Flap and cover your windpipe when
Yeah,
larynx.
so weird. It flaps and covers the windpipe, which this is like too small really, but that's the tube to the windpipe, and make sure that the food makes its way to, what's this tube right here?
The trachea. No, the esophagus.
The esophagus. The esophagus, because that's where the food is going to go. But we also have this common space right back here where there's like the food can go, and even like up in here, we're going to start to talk about respiratory system. What's the name for that space that's like in the back of the mouth area? The pharynx. The pharynx. And technically, and even when you look in your pig, we have the oral pharynx, which when you look in the oral cavity, that's the space in the back of the mouth, kind of near the epiglottis. How do you get on your pig to the nasal pharynx? Bless you. Right, you go up around above the soft palate. There, that's the nasal pharynx. But really, they all combine together to be this common passageway, the pharynx. So this passageway here, pharynx. And I know it sounds weird, but like picture your pig when you're looking at these, like thinking about this kind of a stuff. It's kind of like, oh yeah, this passage goes here, this goes there. Let's see here. The esophagus. So that's part of the pathway of the food. Remember, I like pathways. So we have the pathway for the food. The chewed up food goes from the oral cavity. You swallow. That's a reflex. Remember, we talked about like little babies, and it is funny to watch little babies figure out how to swallow food. They push a lot of it out with their tongue at first when they're doing more solid food. So into the esophagus. Esophagus is part of the digestive system. What digestion do we have in the esophagus? Zero. None. No digestion. Okay? It's basically a passageway. So we have no digestion happening. But what's the squeezing of moving things along? What's that squeezing, the title for that? Yeah? Something stalls this. Peristalsis. Right, because it's squeezing all the way around and pushing that stuff along. So we've got but we do have peristalsis. And that's really what's pushing things along. Okay. Oh yeah, and see, I went rogue. It's me. I don't actually like write things where the little line is. So B, that's the esophagus. I just wrote it off to the side because I was too impatient. Welcome to my personality to find out where it was. So you could have very nicely had the esophagus listed here for B. Okay. Interesting side note, not part of the digestive system, but anybody have an idea? What do you think this dark line is, that kind of curved? Yeah, what do you think? The diaphragm. The diaphragm, that's that sheet of muscle on that pig that we were talking about, and it separates your thoracic cavity, the chest cavity, from the abdominal cavity. We're going to start talking today about the respiratory system, and the diaphragm is going to be really, really important related to that. Okay, so cruising along here, what did you have for D?
Stomach.
The stomach. Anybody label any sphincters on the stomach? Come on, aren't you like more interested in labeling sphincters on the stomach? No? Okay, yes, so what's this top? Some people did. Some people like, yes, I did. What's that top one? What is that called, that opening or gateway to the stomach? The cardiac sphincter. And if you've ever had heartburn, or heard about somebody who has heartburn, it's basically, unfortunately, some of those digestive juices from the stomach that are making their way up past the cardiac sphincter and irritating the esophagus. The esophagus is not pleased about having those digestive juices working on it, kind of a thing. Okay, so the stomach. Oh, and so I mentioned some digestive juices here. What kind of digestion do we have happening in the stomach? It's kind of weird. Do we have both? I usually, there's a little churning, right, that happens a bit. It's not really tons of mechanical digestion. Sometimes I do say I'll take it, but definitely some chemical digestion. What are we starting to break down now, or like what's doing some digesting, the chemical digesting in the stomach? So we have proteins, Right, because now we're starting to get some amino acids. Remember,
Only a
amino
little bit,
acids.
though.
What's that?
Only a little bit though, isn't it?
Like a little bit though, right? It's a little bit, but we do a little bit of that. So we have this thing that's called pepsin. And because it has that pep, that's our protein. So that's going to help break down proteins. We also have some hydrochloric acid, HCl. But really the stomach, and the stomach is kind of like the most famous part of the digestive system. Am I writing too small? I see lots of people like squinting. All right. And I have really crummy handwriting. You're so lucky that I type things. I'm just going to say, like, compared to when I used to teach physics. Can you imagine formulas with me? Woof, rough stuff. Okay. So the stomach gets a lot of fame for being the amazing part of the digestive system. But what is it used? What's the general function of the stomach? Yeah. Storage. Storage. It's why you don't have to eat all the time. Okay. I'm not so sure I'm convinced, but it's basically like used for storage. Okay, so let's see here, and we have churning. Ooh, what's the stuff in it now? Because we had our bolus, our ball of like chewed up food and saliva in our mouth that got squished down our esophagus. What do we call it now that it's been added in with those digestive juices of the stomach? Starts with a C. Looks like it should be chyme. Chyme. It's pronounced chyme. So I'm going to just draw in some slishy sloshy chyme in here. Chyme. Okay. You could also have, we could add in more stuff too. What's this other kind of knobby section? Sphincter. That's right down there. The pyloric sphincter. And if you're in my lab, I was really trying to get my students to touch the pyloric sphincter because it's like really tough and rubbery. I don't know if Cindy tried to convince you guys to touch that or not, but it's really, really tough and muscly. The pyloric sphincter. Now, also on the stomach, we talked about some areas. I'm not so worried about those areas for lecture, but for lab, for pig dissection, we talked about the lesser curvature, the greater curvature, the body portion, which is the main section. The cardiac portion is up near the cardiac sphincter. This would be the lesser curvature, the short way from sphincter to sphincter. Greater curvature, the long way around. What is this one that's C, that's back here, keeps going over here and over here? Absolutely huge, giant organ. What's that one?
Liver.
The liver. The liver. Liver is important for the digestive system, but it is not part of the pathway for the food. It's an accessory organ. It adds juices to the mix. What juices does liver add?
Breaks down amino acids.
Something that breaks down fat. But I like, she's playing along. I appreciate it. Yes. Bile, or you could say bile or bile salts. Right. So this has bile, which breaks down fat. And then the liver has this little friend next to it, this little thing that looks like a balloon. And really, it should be green in color. What is that little thing? The gallbladder. And the gallbladder basically stores a bunch of the bile salt. It's like the backup kind of little storage tank for bile. All right. Now, and we started to talk about this a little bit before I turned on my recording. What's this feather-looking like structure that's going to add in some digestive juices? We discussed if it was the spleen, and I said, no, it's not the spleen. It's the pancreas. The pancreas. People are mouthing at me. The pancreas. Pancreas is really the unsung hero of the digestive system. Super, super important. Pancreas has enzymes that digest everything. Digests everything. Okay? So this is where we have our majority of our enzymes, of our digestive enzymes, and it does it all. Okay? Pancreas, super, super important. Some of us know the pancreas more, and so this is considered to be, your digestive system is weird. It's considered to be exocrine function because the digestive system, the stuff in your digestive system, until it crosses the border and becomes part of your body, it's considered outside of your body. Weird thing to think about. It's like a hose from one end to the other end, and as stuff travels along, it's still considered to be external to your body. But, so that is the digestive system, the digestive enzymes from the pancreas, that's called exocrine function because it's stuff that's like contributing to things that are outside your body. Pancreas is really most famous in general circles for its endocrine function, which has to do with your blood sugar levels. In terms of, monitors like our insulin and glucagon that control your blood sugar levels. And those are considered endocrine function because your blood is part of your body. Kind of a weird thing. The stuff of your digestive system does not count as part of your body until it gets absorbed in the small intestine into your bloodstream. Kind of a weird thing to think about. So, speaking of which, there was a question, where are the different parts of the small intestine? So this is kind of a wimpy drawing of the small intestine, but better than I could do, so I'm not complaining. Okay. What's the first part of the small intestine? Yeah, the duodenum or the duodenum. Tomato, you do you. I had always learned it in the Seattle area at the University of Washington as the duodenum. I did not learn it until the duodenum, until I came here to NIC. All of my master's stuff that I did in other places too, it was the duodenum. And only here at NIC it was duodenum. I was like, Okay, all right. I shall acclimate myself. So that's the first section of the small intestine. So I'm going to just go like this. And I know I'm using too many. I didn't bring enough colors. Duodenum, the first section of the small intestine. What's the middle section? In my lab, you'll hear me go, what's this? What is it? The jejunum. And I always am like, jejunum. Yeah, somewhere here in the middle. It's the middle part. The jejunum. And then the last part of the small intestine, and it's much longer than this. What's that last part called?
Ileum.
Ileum, thank you. Now, duodenum, jejunum, the ileum. Which one is known for doing the most absorption of nutrients? Which is where you actually get the benefit of all of your nutrition. Which part is that? The ileum. The ileum is where we do the absorption. The jejunum is where we do the most digestion. And then the duodenum, what's so great about the duodenum? It's super important. That's basically where you're adding in all the ingredients. That's where you're like, oops, and I'm off the screen. That's where you're adding in all of the digestive enzymes. I'm going slower through this than I wanted to, but it's not bad. I wanted to practice with you guys because I didn't see you on Friday. I feel like we needed to have a moment. All right, check this all out. Okay. Ooh, what's the extensions that happen in the ileum? Those little finger-like projections, and then they even have their little teeny tiny parts there. Starts with a V. Those are the villi. Villi. And I gave a gross statistic. I think, did I tell you guys that if you ironed it out, it would be like the size of a doubles tennis court? You? Okay. But also, because even though it's however many feet long and basically the width of a quarter, because there are all of these little projections. What's so great about having all of these villi, and then there's even on the villi, there's microvilli. Why is it a big deal to have all of these little projections sticking into this space? Surface area. Because if there are these little projections, it's more places for that nutrition to get absorbed into your body. Because remember, if it's cruising along the digestive system, it's still considered external to your body. So having all of the villi has that surface area for absorption. So that's allowing you to get as much of that nutrition out of your food as possible, to take up as many of those monomers, those smaller pieces as possible. Okay, let's see here. I would make sure that you know about the different digestive enzymes that cruise along. Let's see here. What about not found on a pig, but what's this H? What's this little side thing? Some people have it, some people don't. Appendix. Okay. And then we have our large intestine. Okay. What's so great, and I guess I'll write this here, the large intestine. Also, and I kind of blur the line here, I also call this the colon. What happens in the large intestine and the colon? Your body is taking something back. Water. Because realize, your body's had all these juices to the stuff for the digestive system. Your saliva, the hydrochloric acid and the pepsin in your stomach, all these other digestive juices and other things. Your body's like, I need that water back. So the colon is basically where it's reabsorbing a whole bunch of water. This is why it's important to stay, among so many different things, hydrated, my friends. Little kids who have first, preschoolers, are a little group of kids who can often become constipated because they run around and they don't drink tons of water because they got stuff to do. They have frogs to find and ants to look at and whatever else, kinds of things. And then they don't particularly like to slow down their life to go to the bathroom. And so then they kind of can end up getting more constipated because they're not drinking lots of water and they have stuff stay in there for longer, kind of a thing. It's really, really important to make sure you're drinking water. So this is where your water gets taken back. And then this last little bit here is the rectum. That's internal. Rectum is storage for the feces till it's a more opportune moment to go. So you're not just trailing waste all the time, kind of a thing. Okay. And then if you want to go crazy, you could label the anus. So that's on the outside. Okay. How are we doing? Did I miss anything really important? I was looking at my cheat sheet here. Did you have a quarter of that stuff listed on yours? Okay. Half, whatever else. Again, this is me going crazy because it's me, right? Adding in all the things. You certainly don't have to do that, but this is available to you. And I put in a couple others for some of these other body systems that we're going to talk about. I suggest this as a way to check and to study. Do what you can and then open up your notes and add stuff to it later on. Okay? All right. I have a joke. Well, not really a joke. Has anybody ever heard of the awkward Yeti? No? I hope you're no. What is that about, Stephanie? Hold on. Where did it go? My awkward Yeti picture. Here we go. This person draws little comics, and this one I had downloaded from online. So this is the digestive system, awkward Yeti style. Okay, digestive system, awkward Yeti. So got the pizza coming on in. What are the teeth doing? Mashing it. What's our fancy word for that? Mastication. Then, who's this little guy with the plunger? Here, I'll zoom in a little bit. The tongue, pushing the bolus back along. And then we've got, this is the esophagus. And notice there's like a doorway right here. What would that doorway be? The epiglottis isn't really shown really well here. This doorway, because this is the esophagus, this doorway I would guess would be the cardiac sphincter to go on in. And here's the stomach adding some acid, and then it goes along, goes through some tubes, and then these guys are adding more acid, more stuff afterwards. Who do you think this one is in yellow? Pancreas. And then here's this kind of grouchy looking guy in brown with his sidekick that's green. So who's the brown one? Liver and the gallbladder, always his little friend. And then this is going along, and then there's like the one that's like, woo, hey, right here off to the side. Appendix. And then we're done. Yeah. So anyhow, Awkward Yeti has some like funny, all sorts of different body system things. Okay. All right, let's get on to our actual stuff for today. As I open this up, have you guys gotten something to review this class? Okay. If not, just so you know, I would love it if you should get something where you could review the lab. So that's either myself or Cindy, and then also the lecture. And you should be getting something like that for all of your classes. It's usually, I think, when you're trying to log in on Canvas. Please do those. Just so you know, your instructor does not see those until after we turn in your grades. So we can't be grouchy about it. Be like, oh, I see how it is. -10 for you, you know.
People see them, like, with your name?
So great question. It does not have your name, so they are completely anonymous when you evaluate a class. The only way I would know if it was you is if you reference, like, we had a particular conversation or something like that, just you and I would know about, kind of a thing. Otherwise, when you evaluate your class, it's completely anonymous, and your teacher doesn't get that information until we turn in your grade. So I can't be like, oh, I see how it is. You marked me down for this, -20 or whatever else. Like, I don't get to see that stuff until after I turn in my grades. But it's really important, and I'm honest, I want to hear the good and the not so good for this class. If you have suggestions, if you had things you didn't like, please let me know. Part of the reason why a huge reason why I do your stuff by week, and I give you guys like a week overview, is because somebody suggested that. I used to do it by unit. And they were like, can you just break it down by week? Sure. It's not hard for me. And your teachers don't know what would be more helpful for you unless you tell us, because it makes sense to us, right? That's how we set it up. And so the things that people have said to me in constructive criticism have been helpful for me in how I teach this class. And so I do want you to know that I read those things, and Cindy reads hers very much, and also for any of your other classes. Those instructors, we get them and read them and all that stuff too, okay? Someone was like, we need open note exams. I was like, cackle. All right, so you're not going to convince me on everything, kind of a thing. But it's good to see what everybody has to say for the class stuff too. Things you like, but also things you really don't like, or suggestions you have for how things could be better, okay? All right. Any questions about that? Have you gotten those yet for this class? Okay, some people said yes. So if not, guess what? They start to bug you after a little bit, and they'll be like, do this kind of thing. Okay, respiration. So we're going to do the respiratory system. This all ties into our digestive system, everything. That was an ominous sort of thing. Okay, so talking about the respiratory system. Respiration, you guys had one day of like cellular respiration kind of a thing. Key idea for this is for our body systems, the human body cells use oxygen and produce carbon dioxide. When we're breathing, we're taking in oxygen, and then our body is producing carbon dioxide that we need to get rid of. So an example for this is that aerobic cellular respiration, which is basically, my friends, the opposite of photosynthesis. And this is where we had C6H12O6. That's glucose plus 6 oxygens, and we end up making 6 carbon dioxides plus, 6 waters plus ATP. It's not really part of, it's like a happy byproduct. It's not really one of our general kinds of things there, but we make that ATP, that energy. How many ATP, and I'll have to slow down, you guys are writing furiously, sorry. I get too excited. I'm like, okay, let's do this. All right. If we don't have oxygen, how many ATP do the cells make at a time? Just two. And that's like when you feel the burn, the lactic acid, like in your quads or whatever else, like if you've been running or doing your wall sits, your planks, you can feel that in your arms or whatever else, that burn feeling, lactic acid. That's also how alcohol is made, like fermentation kind of a thing. How many ATP? So we only had two if there was no oxygen. How many did we make approximately? And some of you might have learned a different amount. How many did we make if you had oxygen available? 32. Oops, what did I do? Bumped stuff. Okay. 32 if there's oxygen available. So cool, and that's what's happening in our cells. That's that cellular respiration. But we need to get that oxygen to our cells in our body, and we need to get rid of the carbon dioxide. That's kind of a product of this cellular respiration. So we need to have this gas exchange, which is this interchange of the oxygen and carbon dioxide between the organism, which is just a living thing, and its environment. We got to have this gas exchange happen. Okay? There are some things that don't need a ton of oxygen, that are live down in the deep sea vents. So I'm going to be a little human focused for this because there are some things that actually can do a whole lot of stuff with just like sulfur and other things. So this is more human respiratory system focused. Okay, so some of this stuff I'm going to acknowledge is going to get a little repetitive. Just so you know, it's going to get a little repetitive, but we're going to go through this idea of gas exchange. This is kind of wild. In our lungs, how many people have studied lungs before, like in health class, or some people had a little bit? So our lungs are not like a big sack. They're basically like bunches of grapes. That sounds like a weird thing to picture. They have lots of these little dead end spots, these little like circly spots that I think of as like a grape. And this space right in here, this is called an alveolus. And we will talk about these a bunch, or alveoli is the plural. And basically our lungs are bunches and bunches of grapes. And these have these nice spherical things because it's a sphere, has a lot of surface area for this gas exchange to occur. We'll talk about some other animals. They don't have that. They more have like sacs for their lungs, but then they don't have as much surface area, so they're not as efficient for their lungs. So this is coming along here, and this is very much related to like your blood and your circulatory system too. Our smallest blood vessels are called capillaries, and they're literally like a single cell thick. And so these blood vessels, your lungs are just like this little grape, that's the alveolus, is like covered in all of these little like capillaries, this web or network of blood vessels. And what happens is as that capillary goes by, that alveolus, it drops off the carbon dioxide, because that's the waste product from the body, and picks up oxygen. So the blood flow, it kind of moves along this whole gradient. It's pretty crazy, cool stuff. So in terms of the 3 phases for this, our first phase is breathing. Breathing is just part of the respiratory system. And when you inhale, you're taking in oxygen. And when you exhale, you're releasing that carbon dioxide. So this is all related to that cellular respiration equation. This is like why this is happening. And I haven't looked at the latest numbers, but in the air that we breathe, what is most of the air we breathe? Because it's not oxygen, actually. Yeah?
Carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen.
Yeah, there's carbon, there's nitrogen, and oxygen. A lot of like nitrogen and oxygen, only about, and I've seen numbers, and I might not be right on this, I think it's like 17 to 20% of the air we breathe is actually oxygen. That's why sometimes like people in the hospital, or if they're having a hard time with their respiration, they have an oxygen tank, and then they have basically this oxygen going right to them. That's actually pure oxygen, so it's increasing the amount of this beneficial gas for them. But in terms of us in our atmosphere, we only about 1/5 of what we're breathing, taking in, is actually oxygen. Kind of an interesting thing to think about. So second part is, bless you, is this transport of the gases by the circulatory system. I'm going to pop up this slide because this will be like the end of where I am today. I took more time on the digestive system thing than I thought I was going to, but I'm okay with that. So the circulatory system is like the third part of this. It delivers the oxygen around. And I know that I put up a lot here. I will start with this on Friday on this slide for you all. But we'll talk about like I was thinking I had to go straight to my hybrid lecture, but I will see you on Friday so we can kind of carry on from this. I haven't had a normal week for a week or two, so it's kind of odd. I apologize. So the circulatory system goes and delivers things around, and the oxygen attaches to the hemoglobin. Way long ago, like exam 1, we talked about hemoglobin. That's a protein that has like multiple different polypeptide chains that are together, and those are in the red blood cells. And the circulatory system carries that oxygen out to all of the different tissues. And then the carbon dioxide is carried, it gets picked up out of the cells and the tissues and gets carried by the blood back to the lungs where it is exhaled, it's gotten rid of. And again, then at the cells take up the oxygen from the blood and give up the carbon dioxide to the blood. So there's multiple different parts. There's breathing, there's what's happening in the blood, and then there's what's happening at the cells. And I am out of time, so I want to be respectful of your time. We will kind of start up again with this on Friday, but good job. And for those who have more dissecting this afternoon, happy reproductive and urinary system extravaganza, okay? And I will see you on Friday.